You are getting so familiar with your patterns. So now you're like, that's a pattern. That's not true. That's a pattern. I'm not going to go into that again. Talk about that, because that's been a big game changer for you.
I caught myself drifting where I was like, oh, you know what happened is my sister-in-law messaged me and said, you're looking good. Like, even if the scale's not going down, I can tell that your body is changing. And I was like, oh, look at me. I look good. I don't need to count my calories. And it wasn't obviously that fast, but there is progress. That doesn't mean you quit because you've made good steps. Like, you've still got to track everything. You've still got to do what you're doing so that you continue to have progress. And it was actually really cool for me to do that, because I've been able to do it for other things, but then to have like progress be a problem and to catch it by myself and be like, all right, like, let's take a step back and get back to where we want to be.
Cool. Well, again, I really, really appreciate you doing this. For context, for people that are so it can connect a little bit more, where were things before stuff started changing for you? Like when it came to like the food noise, the uncontrolled around food, like all of that stuff. Talk a little bit about where things were.
So before I joined, it was constant. Like, what can I eat? What should I eat? I had breakfast. Is it too early to have a snack? I ate this for lunch. Now I want something sweet. And then on top of that, it was a lot of body image stuff mixed in with that. So it was a constantly like thinking about what I can eat, when I'm going to eat, and then immediately like, oh, but I don't like how I look and I shouldn't eat that. And so it took up a lot of brain space.
Yeah. Well, and this is the reason why I wanted to have you on and talk about this, is because I think, number one, the stuff that you and I have talked about, most people struggle with, but they think they're the only one on the planet that struggle with. So it's like, I remember I just did a podcast with him, my guy, Brett, and he was like, dude, I thought I was the only one that binge ate at night or binge ate in general or had food noise. Then I heard your podcast, like everyone does. I go, yeah, this is a big thing. But like in that moment, most people think it's just them. So I think it helps other people listening who are trying to figure this out for themselves, hearing other people, they go, oh, that's how I feel. Well, but then if she can do it, then I bet I can do it. Because it's like the whole 4-minute mile thing, right? Where once one person did it, then all of a sudden everyone else thinks they can do it. So, because you were talking about in that video you sent the other day, because you were talking about how anytime you tried this before, you couldn't lose more than 5 pounds, but then you're still in stage 1 of dieting from the inside out. Weren't even trying to lose weight yet because of that, but you lost 10 pounds. So talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah. So I've done it all. I did, especially after I had the twins, which is where I've kind of found myself struggling the most. So I did Weight Watchers 2 or 3 different times, because every time it's going to be different. Like, I'm going to take it serious this time. I did Noom, which I really didn't enjoy. I tried to get back on the fasting wheel. Essentially, if I saw it on Facebook and somebody had success with it, I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be successful this time. And it never worked out. I'd quit. I'd get frustrated. I would have one bad meal and be like, well, if that's what it's going to be, then I should probably go have cake.
Sure.
If I didn't work out in the morning, then the entire day was shot. Like, it was just like, well, if I'm not going to work out, I should go have a Mountain Dew and pizza. And then it would just spiral and be like, okay, well, I'll start tomorrow. No, maybe I'll start on Monday.
Lots of all or nothing going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious. So for you, what made you even receptive to like inner work and dieting from the inside? Like all that stuff. Like, cause I always tell people, like, when they come across my content, usually it's one of 2 responses. It's what is he smoking? Okay, that woo-woo bullshit. Or it's, where has this been? This is the secret sauce I've been looking for my whole life. So for you, what made you even receptive to this very different approach to losing weight and stopping food noise and all that stuff?
I think it's just where I'm at in life. I'm doing a lot of internal looking anyway. I was struggling with depression, and so I had been working with a therapist for a little while, and then we kind of stumbled on to PMDD, And so there was a lot of work on that. And then listening to your podcast and everything, I was like, well, that just makes good sense. Like, obviously. And I struggled. I mean, I started struggling with body image and weight in high school where I didn't have a weight problem. And so just thinking back, and I was like, I don't actually know what healthy is. I don't know that I ever did. So it's like, maybe I should learn that, and maybe I should learn what my issues are with food.
Sure.
And then it'll maybe click for me.
I love it. And it's crazy in such a short period of time. It has like how long would you say the struggle has been?
I would say that it's been on and off again since junior high. So like 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
I think I had better self-image at that time, so I was able to brush off a lot of stuff. And then, yeah, definitely after having twins at 30, I don't know, I think I was 36-ish. Yeah, so being older, having twins, the pandemic, all of it kind of compiled into one cluster for me. And it really took a hit on my self-esteem.
Yeah, I totally get that. For you, is it like kind of zooming out and looking at things in hindsight? Is it kind of weird to be like 12 years of struggle and then like the last 4 months, 3-4 months, you're like, wait, food noise is down. I'm enjoying my food. I'm not a perfectionist. Is it kind of weird to like zoom out and look at this journey?
I haven't really done that, but every once in a while it'll just kind of hit me. And I'm like, oh, look at me. I'm not like paranoid. Like I went to dinner and I wasn't paranoid about hanging out with my friends and having a shared appetizer. Like crazy.
Yeah. Well, here's what's funny though. Most people, and this is where I think the magic happens, is when you heal through these things the right way, it's almost like you forgot the issue was there. Yeah. Right? Where it's almost like, let's say, we see this a lot of times with like more severe, like let's say like more severe things like alcohol addiction, drug addiction, or like bigger, like we'll call these that category of stuff. They're like 1 day without alcohol, 2 days without alcohol, 3 days without alcohol. And it's almost like this countdown where it's like, like I can't mess this up. Versus in the world of that I see like relationship with food and binge eating and all this stuff, it's almost like it's not quite that rigid, but it goes to like, oh, yeah, I guess I haven't binged in a while. Yeah, I guess I forgot food noise was a thing. And I feel like it just kind of fades into the background for people. Would you agree with that?
It totally does. And I feel like because we did such small steps that it all just kind of falls into place. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's not a problem right now. Like,
yeah.
I feel really good right now.
Yeah. I think that's the epitome of healing and truly getting on the other side of this. It's almost like if you have back pain all the time, as the back pain goes away, you catch yourself on autopilot doing things you wouldn't do. You're like, oh, this would have hurt my back. And then it just kind of hits you out of nowhere. But I think that's what's happening here, which just is a testament to the work that you're putting in and doing so well with. Now, one thing I wanted to hear you talk about a little bit more, because I'm just curious from the story behind this. You said that before you joined, you said you were like 3 days from going to the doctor and like going to get on some medication and take some more bigger approaches. But then like something stopped you. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I know a couple of ladies that are on weight loss medications and have had great success. And so I'd been talking to my husband, just hanging out on the couch, and I was like, I'm frustrated. I can't make it work. I'm failing. And he was like, well, maybe it's time to look at getting more help. And so I made the appointment, and I had to wait 3 months, which was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
Because then I don't know if I was listening to a podcast or I subscribed to your email and something came up and it was like, oh, I'm going to do like this case study. And I was like, all right, like that's going to start right before this appointment. I was like, this is going to be my last ditch effort. Like if I can't make this work now, then medication is the only option I've got. So that was my thing. I mean, medication made me nervous anyway though, because then it's not fixing anything. So
Sure.
it'd be like Weight Watchers, where it's like, while I'm doing this, I can have success. But what happens when I'm not doing this?
What I tell people too is because when it comes to let's say the meds like Ozempic, GLP-1, all that stuff, is this work has to be done regardless. Because I made a video about this the other day. Is I go, if you're going to get on one of these drugs, and I'm not shaming anyone who does, is you have two options. You either have to be on it forever, and you're just and treat, like I know a lot of people treat it like a hormone replacement or an antidepressant, where they're like, I do not plan on ever coming off, and cool. Or option two is you have to go to the root cause of these problems in general. It's almost like a person like that. Let's say they get on let's say an antidepressant, but they're not doing the internal work with like in therapy and on their own. And then they get off the antidepressant, they go back to being sad. It's like, we have to go to the root cause of these things. And I think there's a lot of people who will use the drug to start to make that a little bit easier to get down into it. But I think having that very mature frame of mind of, well, I don't want this to be another temporary thing, because I think it's also easy to get on the medicine and go, I feel so good, I don't need to do the work. I don't need to uproot my childhood and learn how to emotionally regulate or try to I think it's easy to get in that trap. But then when we come off, we see a lot of people, all that stuff comes back and almost with a vengeance. It's like my cravings are stronger, my hunger is crazier, and things like that. So,
Well, and part of what I think has come into play was like, I didn't realize some of that stuff's not normal. Like, to constantly be thinking about food. I thought that everybody does that. Like, everybody's like, all right, what's the next meal, and how am I going to put that together, and how am I going to justify that in my head? And so doing some of this work, it's like, oh, I don't have to think that hard about this. So yeah, it's been eye-opening.
Yeah, I love that. What the thing that I view it, because I think a lot of people think some of these things, like, yeah, a lot of people will think they're the only one, but I think a lot of these issues people think are normal. Like, people think your back is supposed to hurt all the time. You think you're supposed to feel like shit as we get older. People think, oh yeah, we just think about food all the time. You're supposed to be ravenously hungry all day. And I the way I view that is like, so I have the best wife in the world. Like my wife is literally the most amazing human ever. And so I know how great my marriage is. And that's my filter through all marriages. I think every marriage should be as great as mine. So then when I hear people talking like, you know, like guys out at like a bar scene, or they're like, oh yeah, my old lady this. And I'm just like, playing cards, like, pass. I don't have anything to say. Like, and I don't want to, even if, you know, but people are like, oh yeah, this is just how marriage is. And I'm like, oh, you don't know.
Yeah, you don't
like,
know.
And like, I
better.
Literally though, like when I wish everyone had like the partner like I have, and it's because it's amazing. But I see so many people in, let's say, relationships who are like, they just think having dysfunction and think manipulation, and they think screaming, they think all these things. They're like, oh, that's just what marriage is. And I'm like, and like with empathy, I go, you don't know. Holy shit. And then I want to go, no, you don't understand it. This is how it's supposed to be. That's how I've always viewed food and your relationship with food, because people go, well, binging is just normal. I'm like, oh, they don't know. Because once you see the other side, you can't unsee it. And I think that's what's awesome about where you're at, is like, you can't unsee, like, if Food Noise ever wanted to come back, you're like, well, this isn't normal. Yeah. I got to go back to my inner work or whatever.
Yeah, so something's wrong here. Like, something's got to be looked at further.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It's been crazy.
So I'm curious. I'm curious for me, but also like for everyone listening. Like, when I'm sure people are thinking, who are going to be listening to this, like, what is this work she's doing? How does she do it? Like, talk a little bit about, like, because not everyone on the internet is like in the case study. Unfortunately, I wish everyone was in the case study. But what has been some of the pieces around this that has made such a difference for you, that's gotten the food noise to drop, help the binge eating go away, the weight to happen? Like, what are some of the things that you can go, this has made a difference for me, that's made a difference for me?
Yeah, I can actually think about a couple of things that we have talked about specifically. One of the trainings was to honor your cravings. Like, oh, I really want that Snickers. Okay, eat the Snickers and be done with it. Like, it doesn't have to roll into an entire day of everything. And you can eat it every day if you would like to, but work it into your calories so that it works. And then there was a training with Grant where he said, one good day doesn't make you skinny. One bad day does not make you fat. Like, if you had a bad day, brush it off and go. If you had, a bad day, a bad meal, a bad thought, like every decision is another chance to make a good decision. And I was like, oh, look at that.
Yeah.
So
I love
it was a
that.
couple of just like little tidbits. And I mean, I take notes during our calls and be like, that is what I needed to hear.
I love that. It's funny, for those that don't know, Grant is my co-coach in the, him and I are partners together in the collective. And, but what's funny is Grant and I also, because I had someone bring this up yesterday, has such a different energy than I have. Like, we are so opposites. It's not even funny. Like, someone was saying, they're like, well, you talk really fast. And so Grant is a little bit slower. It's like speaks a little bit slower, way more eloquent than I do. Like, but it's funny that you bring that up, because Grant has, I always viewed it almost this like, almost like stoic Yoda kind of energy, I think, where it's a little bit, it's much more calm, much more, because I'm just like brute intensity. I just want to like doing last night's call in a Starbucks, I had to hold back a lot. Like, I'm wanting to get fired up, and I'm like, okay, there's like a dozen people around. I can't be swearing. I can't get loud. I'm trying to regulate. But so those for you, those are the big ones, where like the concept of the food, and then it's almost like that, the thing Grant said, almost like letting go of some of the, I don't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
Those were the two big ones for you.
And it's just, and you always think about it, right? Like, you see the things where it's like, I had a salad. Why am I not skinny? And you're like, oh yeah, that's dumb. Of course, funny. But on the flip, it never even occurred to me. It was like, I had a bad meal. I should quit. It's over now. It's like, no, it's the exact same thing. It's one meal. Let it go.
Yeah.
And enjoy it when you do it. Like, don't be beating yourself up and guilty, because that's not making, and it's not helping.
Yeah. Yeah. Guilt. It's funny. Guilt. I said this one time on a call, and it was like one of the most magical things I've ever said that just came out of me. And it was along the lines of, guilt and shame are just ways we try to manipulate ourselves to cause action wrapped in a bow.
Yeah.
And it never works, you know?
Yeah, it's so true.
What's interesting when you brought that up, though, when you said that, well, like, look at it, I ate a salad, and of course I'm not skinny, but like, wait, so if I ate one meal off, I'm not off track either. Like, it's funny, we don't see things from both polarities. For example, everyone knows how easy it is to overeat. Well, that means it's, in the same context, easy to eat in your deficit or eat in your numbers, right? If you can, like, let's say we all know if you like, it's easy, you could have a Sprite and drink 2,000 or 200 calories like that. But at the same time, you could create a 200 calorie deficit like that by cutting out that Sprite. Or if we can accidentally start rounding or rounding our numbers and blow our deficit out of the water, that means you can just tighten it up just a little bit and drop into your deficit. These polarities work on both sides of the fence, not just to derail you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. For you, when the concept of eating these foods every day, I kind of want to lean in on that, because I say that to a lot of people, and they hear that, and they're like, they're sitting back in their chair. They're like, wait a second. You want me to eat? Once I start, I can't stop. And you want me to eat this stuff every day? For you, was that hard to wrap your head around at first, going from like, these are bad, I can't have this, to, my dumbass saying, no, I want you to have Snickers every single day? Like, was that awkward at first?
I still catch myself every once and again where I'm like, I don't need that. And I was like, I don't need it, but I can fit it in my calories. Like, it's not going to be the end of the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was a big game changer for me, where it's like, I can eat whatever I want, so long as 80% of the time I'm eating foods that satisfy me physically, not just emotionally. Yeah, that made a world of difference for me.
That's awesome. I love that. I think that for you, because you used to have that pattern of very all or nothing. So was there a lot of internal conflict around that, where it's like, wait, part of me feels very all or nothing. If I can't have all of it, I don't want any of it. But then there's this moderation. Was there like this internal kind of headbutting going on for you at all?
I never felt like if I can't have all of it, I don't want any of it. Not I didn't think about it that way anyway.
Okay.
But it was, if I cannot be perfect, I cannot do anything. And so there's been headbutting around that, where it's, if I can't stick to this as it is. And honestly, I think increasing calories changed that a lot too. It's like, oh, I can have more than 1,200 calories, which makes the world a lot easier.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So it was like, oh, you can have 2,000 calories a day and lose weight. And I was like, well, bring that Snickers in. I've got room to spare.
Yeah. It's abundance now.
Yeah.
I think so many people who struggle with their relation. This is why I talk about like the 7 heads of food noise. That one of them is you're just not eating enough. Think about it, if it was financially, if your money was so strapped and your expenses were so high where like you're down to the wire, like every penny has to be perfect. Otherwise your lights are getting shut off because you're overdrafting. Like your stress is going to be, and the noise around money and numbers are going to be through the roof. But if you're making well over the amount of money that you need to pay your bills, you can breathe a little bit. It's not, that noise isn't as loud because it's not down to like, what if the groceries are a little bit more this week? Or, I forgot we had to pay that quarterly tax payment. Whereas it's the same thing with food. If you're down to the wire of like, I can only eat 1,200, but I'm like 2,000 calories hungry, like it's going to make that skyrocket. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. Is that where your numbers are at right now? Like, is it closer to 2,000?
Yeah.
You went from 1,200 to 2,000.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it was.
How do you?
I had
go ahead.
Grant check my numbers too, so I was like, this can't be right. Like, this says like normal every day is like 2,500 calories, and he was like, yeah, no, 2,470 something, and I was like, so to be in a deficit, I could have like 2,200 calories, and he's like, yep, seems right. And I was like, oh, look at all the fun I could have.
And then all of a sudden 10 pounds disappeared and food noise shut off.
Yeah.
See, this is the magic. And this is why I always tell people, test your upper limit. I think so many people are conditioned, whether they've heard it from the doctor or they're a shorter female or whatever the thing that makes you go, oh no, 1,200 is it, or 1,000 is it, or 1,500 is it. But I think everyone should test their upper limit, because this happens more times than not, is you go,
yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. Even if it, let's say, play devil's advocate, even if it wasn't 2,000, going from 1,200 to 1,700, 1,800, that's a couple extra meals in the day. And that makes such a big difference.
Well,
so how do you feel now that you're...
That's where I find myself falling too, is between 1,700 and 1,900. And then I'm comfortable. Like, I'm not hungry. I'm not constantly thinking about food. But then if I have a day that it's 2,100 calories, I'm like, well, it's all gonna come out in the wash.
Yeah. This is the epitome of what I call accidental fat loss, is where you fix these deeper things. You checked all the boxes. So we got through emotional eating, so you're not binge eating every day. We got through the relationship with food. We got through the food noise. We got through overall binge eating. And we got the calories high enough so where you're not just thinking about food all day. And now you notice all the stress is gone. All the things that caused you to overeat are gone. And then now the friction is gone. So now you by proxy accidentally end up in a deficit without even thinking about it. And then I think, and then you said, like, then all of a sudden, like, jeans are fitting that didn't. And then all like that, this is the stuff I'm talking about. This is the epitome of dieting from the inside out. So you can then diet for real. This is like embodies that. This is incredible.
Yeah. I think, another thing, and it's still something that I'm working on, but like, the scale noise. Whereas before, it's like, if it spiked at all, I was like, well, I messed something up. Like, I should just quit now, because I can't, obviously I don't know what I'm doing, which was another thing. It was like, I don't know what I'm doing, so is it working? But now it's like, okay, it's just scaling up. I either ate something later, or I had a good workout, or any of the 500 things that it could be. It's like, let's not worry about it until it stays there for 5 weeks and nothing's happening. Like,
yes,
just go about your day and see what happens in the next couple.
This is awesome. Okay, Tanya, you need your own podcast. This is just, you're just like spitting TED Talks here. This is great. Well, so this is the thing though, and I was actually going to bring this up because you started talking about this, and you just kind of alluded to it, is you are getting so familiar with your patterns like your unconscious patterns that we're just running on autopilot. So now you're like, that's a pattern. That's not true. That's a pattern. I'm not going to go into that again. Talk about that, because that's been a big game changer for you.
Yeah, I just this early this week, maybe late last week, I caught myself drifting where I was like, oh, you know what happened is my sister-in-law messaged me and said, you're looking good. Like, even if the scale's not going down, I can tell that your body is changing. And I was like, oh, look at me. I look good. I don't need to count my calories. And it wasn't obviously that fast, but like,
Sure.
you know, you're just like, oh, I'll estimate how much creamer that is. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And my weight wasn't changing, but it was a mental thing that I was like, oh, like, no, that's not how we do things anymore. Like, there is progress. That doesn't mean you quit because you've made good steps. Like, you've still got to track everything. You've still got to do what you're doing so that you continue to have progress. And it was actually really cool for me to do that, because I have been able to do it for other things. But then to have like progress be a problem and to catch it by myself and be like, all right, like, let's take a step back and get back to where we want to be and where you feel good. And then, you know, just get back on routine.
This is like approaching the grounds of what I call like mastery is you cannot master yourself and your behavior and your beliefs and your body and your emotions if you do not get really familiar with you. Right? Like, because I'm sure you could say this, like attest to this as a mom, where I bet you can notice when your kids are starting to not be like, being little heathens, because you notice their patterns are changing. You go, what are you hiding? What are you taking in there? What's under that? What are you doing? Like, I remember like when I was a kid, that's how my mom was. I'd like wanting to sneak something or be whatever. And she's like, what are you doing? Because you won't look at me in the face now or whatever. But when you have the self
things, you know, like, oh, you're hungry. Like, let's go get you a snack because you're kind of being a sasshole. Like, let's go take care of that.
Sasshole. I'm going to use that, being a sasshole. That's awesome. But exactly. But it's easy to spot patterns in other people. It is really hard internally with ourselves. And the fact that you are already noticing that, because the thing is, this is not a perfectionist game of, oh, I'm never going to mess up. I'm never going to have drifting tendencies. I'm never going to have stuff like that happen. The magic is catching it, and it's the rebound time. So for you, how long did it go from her saying that to you noticing you were drifting? How long of a time period when you noticed drifting was happening?
I would say it was a week in which I was like, oh, that was the problem. That was the trigger. But there were like, it would just be days from like, okay, what am I doing? Like, stop trying to estimate, like actually do the work.
Yeah.
So I was pulling myself back quite a few times, but it was probably about a week that I was like, that's what triggered you to start walking down that path.
That's incredible. Here's why. Most people, this is why I always talk about on the sabotage continuum, where most people should think about sabotage as sabotage. But sabotage is when like you've been messing up for a long enough time, you are actually your results are now going backwards. Drifting happens before the sabotage. It's like you don't know you're moving that way until it's there. I've been working on this concept of what comes before drifting, and that's a whole nother conversation. But the thing is, most people have been drifting, started to sabotage, then have been sabotaged, and then they're 10, 20 pounds gained, and they go, what happened? How did I get back here? The fact that you were able to do it in less than a week and then immediately course correct without overcorrecting. Because how many times do we see that? We get off a little bit. We go, oh no. Then we tighten the reins too much, or we work out 8 days a week. But the fact you didn't do that, you went, oh, I'm doing it again. And you just made this micro adjustment of like, back to not even on track. It's back to my normal commitments and normal plan. So.
Yeah. And it's fun to start seeing that, like, oh, that's my first step. That's the thing I need to pay attention to. Like, I stopped drinking as much water. As soon as I let water drop, then everything else kind of creeps in. So it's like, oh, like, I need to pay more attention to that. And I was told that I look good. I stopped drinking as much water. And then I started, creep in, just put a toe in, see what it feels like. And I was like, it doesn't feel good. Like,
yeah. Well, and again, I think people need to realize that are listening, like we're not looking for perfection, but at the end of the day, if we stop doing the things that got us here, results are going to go away too. It's why from day number one, it's all about what's sustainable, what's practical. Because even with that, you're not going to be counting calories forever, but in the phase that you're in, that is part of the plan. But how many times especially for those that are listening, I actually talk about this a lot when I'm having a consultation with someone, is most people, as soon as they get to the result they want, they stop doing the things that got them there. And then they're flabbergasted that the results decided to go away. But if you quit going to work, you're not going to be surprised you quit getting paid. If you quit cleaning your house, you're not shocked when the house is a mess. When you quit doing dishes, you're not surprised that they pile up. When you quit disciplining your kids or having standards, you're not surprised when they turn into heathens. Like it's no different here. When we stop doing what got us here, it's no wonder the results start to go away as well.
Well, and what I think is so cool about what you're teaching and like where you're leading the horse to water, right? Because if I don't want to do it, you can't make me do it. But to do the internal work. So I've done Weight Watchers and lost weight. I got to the weight I wanted to be at. I quit Weight Watchers. I never stopped thinking about food when I was on Weight Watchers. I probably thought about it more. And so when I stopped counting points, then it just kind of all crept back. Like I never fixed the problem. I just restricted greatly. Yeah. And when I didn't have to restrict greatly because I was putting it into an app, I was like, oh, I have all of the points. And I didn't fix anything. Like I was still paranoid about food.
Yeah. That brings up such a good point. I just ordered the stuff for it. I got this. I'm trying to like take my analogies to like light and like create content, like the thing of water in my kitchen, like all that stuff. And I'm going to be doing one on this where it's the equivalent of like you try having a bucket full of water, but yours is full of holes. And so you're just like, oh, if I dump enough water in it, I restrict enough, my bucket stays full, but it is pouring water out all the holes. Each of those holes is food noise, relationship with food, ability to show up, sustainability, all these things. Whereas if you're like, I just want a bucket full of water, that's my success. It's easy to keep dumping water in or just restricting, doing more workouts. But this game is so much easier to hold the water if you just plug the holes. So, and that's exactly what you've done. Because my goal, I don't talk about this a ton, but my goal is in any of my programs, like especially like in the collective, my goal is I know no one's going to stay in there forever, right? Don't get me wrong, I would love it if people would, but and I have it set up where people can stay long enough in a long time to really get what they need. But I also know as a coach, part of the role as a coach is to prepare someone where they don't need you forever, because I do not want any of my programs to be a notch in the proverbial bedpost of diet attempts. I would hate if someone's like, yeah, I did that Jared Hamilton's program, and then all of a sudden it was great when I was on it, but I gained all my weight back. Like, fuck, I don't want that. Whereas this is why I'll do podcasts with clients and members who like they coached 4 years ago and they're still crushing and these kind of things. So but the only way I know I can do that is if we put these things in place. Let's get to the bottom of the food noise and heal it. Let's get to the bottom of the relationship with food, fix it forever. Let's make you really regular around your emotions so you don't have to turn to food. Because if someone's diet strategy is just eat less, move more, restrict until I can't take it anymore, it's no wonder that the results are going to go with the wind as well. So, yeah.
Well, and I'm assuming that the majority of people you work with, it's all something different, right? Like they have their own triggers, they have their own problems. And so like doing the Coma Letter that I had put off much longer than I probably should have. But when I finally did it and I was like, oh, wow. Like I went back and read, like I had done a strength finder thing. I had done all the PI stuff. So I went back and read all those and I was like, holy cow. I used to resonate with that. Like that was who I was. And I have slid so far away from that. And so like pulling all that back in is like, that's who I am. That's where I want to be. And just having your own goals and knowing your own triggers without someone necessarily sitting there and holding your hand to do it. Yeah. It's exactly what I needed.
I love that. Well, because like the thing that I love about the Coma Letter, what's funny is how I don't know if I've ever told this story. The Coma Letter happened on an accident. Literally every major thing I've ever done, I'm like, oh, this sounds like a good idea. But whenever the Coma Letter became a thing, is I was working with people on like their identities and all this, but we're guarded. where like, that's not practical, or, oh, I could never do that. And it's all bullshit limitations. But my thought was, how can I get these people, how can I get whoever I'm working with to put all those guards down and put all those internal beliefs of, well, that's not practical. How can I get them to do that and put it all on paper? And so that's why I'm like, well, what if I played out the story of like, this catastrophic thing happens. You just wake up from it, or you're about to go into a coma, or the doctor's like, yo, I have to do this brain surgery and I might reset everything. Do me a favor. Just write a letter to yourself who you are so you can read it if I hit it when you wake up. I think that can be so real enough for people. They can go, okay, if that actually happened, put myself in those shoes. What would I actually write? And it makes it a little bit more real. And I had no idea the Coma Letter, when I started having people do it, was going to be such a powerful thing. What's crazy though is, and I haven't told people this, I've got a handful of other things because of how powerful that's been. I'm working on a like worksheet for like that kind of stuff. Like almost like a course in being, like on how to be that person, like a course in being. Cause it's sometimes this stuff is so intangible. It's really hard to say, well, this is the line that I'm comparing it to. So if we almost had like a thing, the Coma Letter is it can be used for that. Am I being that person? But I think we can make it a little bit better. And then I only mentioned this for the first time last night on the call. I was hesitant even. Part of me is like, I don't even know if I should be saying this on here, because this is all goes for collective stuff. But I actually thought about, were you on the call last night?
No, I wasn't. We had parent-teacher conferences.
No, you're good. I actually have this concept. I do this. I've recently started playing with this for me, but I've actually started making my own guided meditations for stuff I'm working on. It's really weird to listen to my own voice, but like in the same way, I'll give prompts around like certain things. I've thought about like, what if I created our own guided meditations for the things that is actually like you get into that state, but then it's guided of instead of hoping Headspace or hoping Calm or hoping whatever has it. It's like, what if I just did it? And I had the prompts I want someone to go through, and I threw that idea out there, and everyone's like, I would absolutely do that. So that's another thing I'm thinking about playing with, to make these deeper shifts internally way more real and way more tangible. So.
Oh, I think that'd be awesome. 'Cause meditating is hard. It's hard to turn off your mind. Hard. And so having someone talking to you like, this is what you're thinking about, and remember to breathe. I think that would be huge.
Yeah. I think, because my thing is, I've actually never, I have such a double-edged sword feeling about guided meditations, because I think they can be great to get someone started, but I think also, if not done appropriately, guided meditations can also be a distraction. Instead of letting your brain just be present with what is, think this. I think it can almost sometimes be a distraction, but I think they do have their time and their place. If you're trying to work on state change, if you are trying to work on getting deeper with processing things, that's why my thought is like, what if I took some of the prompts that I give people with journaling and I put it in a 10 or 15 minute meditation, and like teaching them using that, how to hold space. So it's kind of, instead of sitting in silence meditation, fully guided, if I kind of like bridge those worlds together. And if someone's listening to this, sorry, that's only in the collective, at least as of right now. So
come join us. It's fun.
Sucks for you guys. No. This is awesome, girl. This has been so good. I'm so excited that you were so open to doing this. I know it's awkward and kind of weird and scary, but I appreciate you doing this so much. So
no, thanks. It's I'm not gonna lie. When I first got the message, I was like, no, that's not what I'm gonna do. And then I was like, well.
So what made you change your mind?
I'm hoping that someone else will hear it. I was talking to my cousin about it. I was like, why would anybody want to listen to me? I'm a middle-aged mom that can't lose weight. And then I was like, oh, that's why. Because I'm a middle-aged mom that needed help. Like, how many people are out there? How many women are out there that are in that same boat?
Yeah. Well, one, that's not you anymore.
No.
Right? But here's the thing. This is what's interesting is I first heard this from a guy that I look up to a lot. His name's Ed Milet. He's a big speaker guy. And he literally says the thing that makes you, that you think makes you disqualified for whatever actually qualifies you. And he had this big story about how his dad was a alcoholic for like decades, like 20, 30 years. And the person who helped his dad get sober was an alcoholic. And it was because the guy used to be an alcoholic. because he's been there, he was able to help his dad and then all that stuff. But it's the same thing. This is why there's a level of people you'll be able to resonate that I won't, because regardless of what I've struggled with in my life, I am not a middle-aged woman. I have not had, I don't have kids. I haven't had the experiences you have had, right? My journey with food noise is very different than yours. We've both had have had food noise, but someone may go, oh, my food noise is exactly like she described, not how Jared describes how she described. So it's ironic that the ego is what's like, oh, you can't, you should, no one will care. When in reality, there's a lot of people that are like, actually, that was the needle mover for me. It's so interesting. There's a client, a lady that worked with us years ago, or not, I don't know how many years, but she, it was the same kind of thing. Her name's Heather. And Heather has one of my favorite stories of overcoming binge eating, because her story is just the way it played out. But I've had so many people, the reason they got the help that they needed, again, whether through our program or on their own or whatever, was because they heard Heather's story. And the amount of people who say, oh, I started because I heard Heather's story. Or but like I, let's say, interviewed someone else from the program. And then they're like, oh, I started though because of Heather. And it like literally, it's like all roads lead to Heather. But then it makes me wonder, well, where'd Heather start? What if Heather heard an episode from Megan or whatever, whereas you don't know where the role that you're playing and just being receptive to what is, and like just speaking from your heart. It's wild the difference that makes, because someone could hear your story, take one thing, and then that was the thing that changed the generational diet culture in their family from you just not even like you just talking about your story. So again, I appreciate it more than you know. So.
No, thanks for literally everything. It's gotten a little bit easier.
I love it. That's awesome. Cool. Well, I will hit the stop button. I appreciate you doing this, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right.